Hello, everyone. So we're now into the final stretch, one of the best presentations, or I'm looking forward to having these guys share their story with you. Excuse me. So let me just very briefly introduce our panelist here from M&G. So we have Simon Wallis, who is now the new global head of operational risk for the firm. He's in the past year, though, he's been head of transformation and change for risk, compliance, legal, and the company secretarial functions at M&G. And prior to joining M&G, he spent 3 years in various assurance roles at Prudential Plc. And prior to that, he was involved in consulting, program delivery, and assurance roles at Deloitte, focusing on banking and securities. Then we have Jenny, who is the change consultant and a member of the team here. She's currently managing all the change delivery aspects of the GRC program. She focuses on really ensuring that it's an effective rollout process for MetricStream, but also, most importantly, driving user adoption. Underpinning the success of the program, she's also developed ways to enhance existing risk and control culture across the business. She has 15 years in the financial markets, wide-ranging experience in managing business change projects. Previously, had worked at HSBC in their global risk transformation program, as well as Credit Suisse. And then finally, we have Ken, who many of you probably heard this morning in our opening session, and he's been one of the program leads and transformation consultant involved in this program. So I will now turn it over to Simon to kick us off.
Thank you, Anna. Am I on? Yeah? Good. Okay, great. If it feels like you've heard some of this before, you probably have this morning. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate we've got the graveyard shift here, so day 2, post-lunch, post-gala dinner. It would be great if you could stay awake, and hopefully we've got some interesting content to take you through over the next few minutes, but we are going to try and canter through the slides quite quickly and just really take some questions at the end, I think. So a bit of background to where we are. We started off life as Prudential Plc, and there were 4 business units, major business units in Prudential Plc. M&G Investments here in the UK, Prudential UK, Jackson, which is our US variable annuity business, or was our US variable annuity business, and Prudential Corporation Asia, which is our Asia Life business. And so in September 2017, we announced to the market that we were going to merge M&G and Pru UK into a single company as part of that group. And then in March 2018, we announced that we were going to demerge M&G Plc, or M&G Prudential as it was at the time, away from Prudential Plc and form 2 FTSE listed businesses. So Independence Day was on the 21st of October, so we've literally a very young organisation in our own right, and so we've been going about a month now. Yeah, so that's probably all we need to say on that. And just in terms of my role in all that, my role was to merge, transform, and operationally separate the risk, compliance, legal, and COSEC functions away from the PLC. And latterly, just the day after the merger, we announced that we were going to basically bring our GRC program together and operational risk together, and under one banner, and me looking after operational risk. So that's basically our backstory. In terms of the project itself, our project pretty much is really centred across all 3 lines of defence with a simple objective to harmonise, simplify, and standardise everything when it comes to risk management, and improve the risk management culture in the firm. So quite a big ask, and we've put together quite a wide-ranging business case to cover all that. But really, it's making risk and control more accessible and more easy for people across all 3 lines. Because I think, if you look at it, there's a lot of jargon used, a lot of complicated language. We just want to bring everybody up to the same level of understanding when it comes to risk and control. So we put together what Ken said earlier, a robust business case, and as part of that business case, we purchased 6 MetricStream modules, and we signed a contract with MetricStream in October 2018. We basically went with MetricStream because we felt the product was the easiest to use as part of our RFP process, and actually the team, Anna and the team, have been absolutely the right fit for us as we go through our journey. So we really wanted somebody that we were comfortable having open conversations with, difficult conversations at some periods of time, but ultimately one where we're all working in the same direction. And I see the guys here, Rishik and Nami, and we've had a tough year, but a great year as well. I think we've achieved a lot as a group. So the program itself really centres around having a strong sponsor. So we're very fortunate that the Chief Risk and Resilience Officer at M&G Plc, Keith Davis, is the sponsor of the program. And really, the other piece around strong sponsorship is exec buy-in. It's massively, massively important when doing this. We've engaged with all the execs on an individual level, so we've made it relevant to them to show them why the program is important for them. Linked it to SMCR and things like that. But really engaging with execs, going to the board. And in fact, one of the execs who will remain nameless, I had a meeting with, and I thought, well, I'll roll my GRC update into the same meeting. And he said, no, I want a separate meeting. I want an hour with you to discuss where we are on this, because this is really important for our business. So I think we've got all of the pillars and cornerstones there to help us make this a success. So in terms of the other thing is team setup. So I'm very, very fortunate to be supported by an incredibly strong team. So Ken from a platform perspective, Jenny from a change and adoption perspective, and James, who didn't want a speaking part in the nativity play, is the content man. So he's the guy that goes out there and talks to the 1B risk teams, and can have a lot of discussion around content and make the program credible. So the other thing that we've done was program governance, and so we've had an operating committee, and that operating committee is first line led. So we have all of the 1B or respective control functions in the project, and they're fully involved. And then the steering committee is the COOs of the various business areas, because we feel they're able to make decisions on behalf of the exec that they work for. So really all about being first line driven. Taking, really the guys in the first line, if they don't use this, then the whole program fails. So massively important. And then, in terms of where we are on the journey, we've put in 6 modules, and we're really entering now into the sort of the adoption and rollout of the program. I've got another slide. Yeah, I've got another slide. Right. So technology is an enabler in all this. It's definitely not the focus. So when we go out with comms to the business, or metric stream is a side thing. It's all about improving the risk and control culture. It's about launching new standards, new ways of doing things, but it's definitely not the system driving it. So that's probably the most important point. We structure the program in 4 blocks, and from my opinion, if we don't deliver on all of those, then the program will fail. So technology, obviously important, getting the product right. That's why we went with metric stream, easy to use. Data is definitely undervalued, and we have somebody specific in the project who looks at data and makes it getting those internal data sets right. Whether that's legal entity structures, that's how we cut the business up from a functional perspective, making sure that we're working with other areas to get those golden sources of data is hugely important. This is all about people. This is really, really all about people and behaviours, and making sure people are trained properly, and making sure that they feel supported when it comes to delivering their risk and control responsibilities. I've seen slides earlier about being zero trust and things like that. For me, this is all about people and giving people the right tools they need to support their roles. Process. So we've probably done what you shouldn't do when it comes to a GRC program. And I've read all the articles on the internet and all the books, and it says don't lead with the technology. Never lead with the technology, you will fail. Well, actually, we've led with the technology, and it's actually helped us quite a bit, because what it's done is we said, well, there's a Prudential UK way of doing things, there's an M&G way of doing things, and then there's this third way, that's the metric stream way of doing things. And actually, could we change our processes to go more to that metric stream way of doing things and keeping the product out of the box? And actually, as we've worked through with the business areas, we've found that we've been able to do that. And so a good example is we had 20 plus risk event and breach processes that had grown up around the 2 firms, and we folded them all into one notifiable event process and wrapped metric stream around that. So the other thing as well is, things like assurance ratings. We rated things 1 to 6, shades of blue, red, amber, yellow, green, not rated. But actually, we were saying, well, metric stream as out the box comes with a 4-scale rating. So, well, why don't we just move to a 4-scale rating? And can we challenge ourselves all to move to that 4-scale rating? And we achieved that in 3 months, because it's common sense. And so really, the product has helped us to standardise a lot of our processes around risk and control, and just look at them differently and take a fresh approach to it. I think that's all I've got to say. Ken, you carry on.
Here's one to see what's going on. So I think just following on from Simon, what I want to talk about is the way that we've maximised the value of the technology, and then I'll talk about some of the approaches and the team structure to the delivery. So we've got 3 key principles driving what we've done. We went into this with open eyes, and we feel that there's a strong cultural fit between M&G and Metric Stream, and we have a very, very strong partnership. As Simon mentioned, we have some quite robust discussions at time, and I think both companies have developed and both companies have learned and evolved from it. So we've provided some feedback to Metric Stream around project delivery, product robustness, product delivery, but also at the same time, the organisations benefited tremendously from the richness of the functionality that comes with the product. Okay. From a discipline perspective, again, we've had to discipline the organisation internally, particularly bearing in mind the amount of change we've been going through at the moment. But we've been working with Metric Stream to ensure that we get a certain amount of predictability from the quality and the timeliness of their deliveries. That's a key element of us being successful, because that gives us credibility. So we're sitting in a room telling people, trust us, if you do this, this will happen. They want to see it, and the delivery, timing, and quality is a key element of giving us that credibility. Okay. So from an efficiency and scale perspective, we've tried to structure the project in a way that gives us some flexibility with regards to the scope of it at the moment. At the moment, as Simon touched on, we're implementing 6 modules. We're in discussions about others as well at the moment, and we'll continue to work through that over the next couple of months. But from a delivery perspective, we've internally taken on some of the implementation or configuration of particularly one of the modules. So the RCSA process, we did that ourselves just to give us some throughput while we were delivering other modules. We've also supplemented onshore capability with offshore capability that looks at the testing and the quality of the product delivery. And during next year, we'll be implementing some automated testing tools that, again, give us that level of predictability and quick turnaround and speed of delivery. Okay. So this slide here just covers off a couple of things. So it talks about the structure of the team, and then also the approach that we take to the delivery of each of the functional elements. So, and Simon and Jenny don't like me using these phrases, but I'm going to do it anyway. But we structured the team around pillars and lintels. So we've got a series of vertical functional pillars supported by some horizontal lintels. So platform delivery is the key basis around how we operate. We want to take a product delivery as quickly as possible from Metric Stream, get it predictably delivered to a predictable level of quality. The frameworks and standards, so we work with the various disciplines around the organisation to ensure that we work to harmonise their standards and frameworks, but then there's a process of governance that we need to go through to get them all ratified. And the data and the reporting is another key element, so working through ensuring that we've got the robustness and the quality of data from some of the corporate services, but then also putting in place data governance around each of the disciplines that are wrapped into the delivery of the product. So, the assurance areas, the risk areas, looking at various risk taxonomies and other items as well. And with regard to reporting, we've considered that up front from a technical perspective, but we've got the flexibility in the way that we've implemented this to deal with come what may as we work through the functional rollout. And I'm conscious that I don't want to step on Jenny's toes at the moment as well. So from a functional perspective, we take 3 steps to delivering the functional elements. So we deliver the platform, we focus on minimal change in the initial delivery. So there will be things that we have to change with regard to aligning the product terminology to corporate terminology and standards. If there are some sensible, obvious areas that we want to cut stuff out, we'll take that opportunity and do that up front. We then take delivery of the system. We use the offshore team to test it, get it to a state where we feel comfortable exposing that to the in-business users. And then we go through this process of assess and accept. So we get the organisation together, we get representatives from each of the different areas into workshops and working groups, and they go through their process. And we get them to focus on the outcomes. We get them to step back from what they're doing at the moment and focus on the outcomes. And it's a key part of the success that we've had. And that's also been supported by the governance that, Simon's touched on. So our key sponsor, reiterates the mantra that he wants us to implement this as close as possible out of the box. So we have the senior buy-in, and from a participation perspective, once people understand the credibility of what we're delivering, they see the quality of what they're being shown. It makes the discussions with them around changing things a lot easier. Okay. From an acceptance perspective, we do make changes, but we keep them to a minimum, and we go through a very, very, very considered process before we accept them. Myself and Simon have had discussions with our colleagues in operational risk in which we've walked away from them and just said no. And a couple of weeks later, they've gone away and they've thought about it, and they've actually accepted some of the rationale that we've articulated. So we have very, very frank and open discussions, but we've established a level of credibility and trust that helps us have those sorts of discussions. And then the onboarding element brings this all together. So all of the functional delivery, the frameworks, the data, then it all ties in together with ensuring that each of the different business areas is ready to accept what we've delivered to them as a project. And this is the non-trivial element of what we're trying to do here, because this is the focus on people. So there's a lot of thought and thinking that's gone into structuring this. And again, we're having very, very strong engagement from all of the business areas. And I'll hand over to Jenny, who'll touch on that in a lot more detail. But this comes into the change delivery and implementation area.
Thank you. Cool. So I think when people think of the change piece, the first thing people think of is traditional training and communication. So getting the message out there and getting people in a room and training them. That's part of it. But also we need other elements to underpin it. And also the training is not just at the outset. We have to make sure that we train people to kick off, but also that they continue to have the skills to use the system and to support that as the life of the platform goes by. So the bricks that we have here, the first brick at the top, we're looking at application. So that is that training and comms space. We do need to do system training. We look at various ways that we can deliver it. So we have that face-to-face training. We also have, particularly where we have senior execs that might be involved in actually kind of approving things in the system. We might have one-to-one sessions, WebExes where we have either time or location constraints, where we have people in different locations, but also where we have new starters who start 6 months after the project's gone live. You have to train them as well. So we're looking at kind of recording WebExes so that we actually have that same material for when they start. And then looking at things like videos and quick reference guides as well. They don't go away. I'll come on to a bit later, kind of another delivery mechanism, though, that we're looking to use for that. So we do have that part. Underpinning that, though, is the context. So what does the business need to do differently from what they're doing now, and actually understanding, translating this for what they're doing. Underpinning that is the knowledge. So revisiting, making sure that we have that baseline of understanding for all the concepts that we're talking about. I've always said there's no point teaching someone to log a risk event if they don't conceptually understand what one is, and also why it should be them, which comes onto the culture piece, which is those reiterating those responsibilities within the 3 lines of defence. So really, that the first line, taking ownership and responsibility for things like risk events. Move on. And this is something that Ken's touched on, which is the kind of the what we're calling the onboarding preparation or the business readiness. And this is something that we do a repeated process for each application, each module, and each business area. So we look at their existing policies and, their processes and procedures. What are they doing now? What kind of a journey have they got? How big is it? Are they just currently using spreadsheets, or are they on a different system? So actually, it's not as big a change as it might be. Roles and responsibilities in a similar way. What are they doing now? Is using the system actually going to fundamentally change the way their team works because of the ways that the workflow works in the system? And the data piece, that's both from static data, so what particular, for their business area, in the particular apps, I think the audit app was one in particular that, what kind of reviews are they doing, what static data do we need in there for them to drive the scope of the audit, but also historical transactional data. So do we want to bring over transactional data into the system for their particular business area? And obviously there's always a balance of that. There's a balance between the benefits of having everything in one place versus potential cleanup exercise, especially if they've been using things like spreadsheets to date. That might be significant to get into the system. Which takes us around to the reporting, and we kind of come from two directions on that. One is looking at reporting they're currently doing, but obviously, again, that could be from spreadsheets, that could be quite clunky, but also looking at from the top, what does the exec want? What do the business want? What would they like to be seeing in their kind of ideal world, and trying to kind of reach a compromise on that, on what we can actually deliver. So that's looking tactically and strategically, and pulling in that data piece, we're using Power BI, which means you can pull information from both spreadsheets, old systems, whatever, plus metric streams. So you're being able to consolidate that information into one reporting, and it looks professional, but it's coming from all sorts of sources. The training needs, that's probably one of the biggest things that we've been looking at. There's a very small picture of the graph that we're looking at. So what we do is we look at the thinking of the frequency and depth of use. So one size doesn't fit all for all the different users of the system. We have people at the top end who are using this frequently, day in, day out, and they use it in depth. So they're fully involved in the workflow, they're completing a lot of fields, they need face-to-face training. They are our auditors, our embedded risk teams, and the like. So they do have a face-to-face session, but recognizing also they will forget some stuff once they leave, so they do need continued support. At the other end of the scale, you might have someone who receives an action a year after we go live. It's not cost-effective to be training all these people in a face-to-face way, and also they'll definitely have forgotten it by the time they go in. So what we're looking at is on-demand training for those users to make sure that they have it at the point of need. And all of that kind of ties into the onboarding planning, and that kind of helps us. Coming back to the training and that on-demand, I don't know if, how many of you were in the session earlier with AppLearn. We signed the contract yesterday, actually, with AppLearn's Adopt product, and we'll be using that to actually deliver a lot of the on-demand training material. It acts as like a seamless overlay on the top of metric stream, so that when the user comes in, they kind of access the system, access to information, rather than having to go off and find it in different places. And we think that actually that's going to really support users as we move forward. One thing we are bearing in mind is, though, the system will change, the organisation will change. So this isn't just a one-off exercise. We have to make sure that we have a BAU team to continue to refresh that information. So 5 years from now, the material for a new starter can still support their use of the system, and we don't just kind of reach an endpoint. Thank you.
Last one, so some key takeaways. I've pretty much ignored what's on the slides and just wrote down what I thought were the key takeaways. So for me, the big things for us as a program, and obviously it's very different for everybody else, but strong sponsorship is the most important. You need supportive execs. This does take quite a long time, and a longer time than the business expects, so it's all about managing the messages and not being too aggressive in the timeline. And it's not easy, and don't fool yourself into thinking it is. You know, a lot of this is, you know, negotiating with people, working through with people, spending a lot of time with the first line teams who are going to be using this, a lot of time with the second line teams and the third line teams. It's very, very people intensive. Technology, take it out of the box. You know, change your processes, not the product. It might be very difficult if you're a massive organisation, you know, with significant politics in place and things like that. But actually, if you can take it out of the box, take it out of the box. I think if you look at our spend as a program in terms of the overall project spend on customizations, it's peanuts. It's less than 1%. So it's very, very small in the context of things, and just brought people along the journey. The delivery team, massively important to have a very good team. I'm very, very, very lucky to have these guys, and they've been hugely supportive. Data, get it right. Don't lose sight of it. We worked out the best way to do it was to have somebody dedicated to it, but it is massively important. Processes, really just have a fresh look. Come open-minded to this, and if people are, oh, we've always done it like this. This is how we have to do it. They need to be thinking more, as what Ken said, about outcomes. It's really important to take a step back, forget what you do at the moment. What is the outcome we're trying to achieve? And last but by no means least is people. The change in adoption is hugely important. 15% of our program spend is dedicated to change. And I think in the AppLearn session earlier that we were talking about, averages of 1%. At the start we thought, well, common sense would dictate we need people to use this system. Therefore, we should spend some money on helping them use the system. Actually the AppLearn product is brilliant and integrates fantastically well with Metric Stream. And make it as easy to use for people as possible. And then the only last piece is the reason we've been so first line led is because you have to get your 3 lines of defence model sorted, and it's really important that the first line understand, acknowledge that they own risk management, not the second or the third lines. And so that would be my sort of key takeaways for all this. But that's it.
First of all, just give them So before I open it up to the floor for some questions, I'll kick it off with a few for the group. So to tell us, in terms of those critical success factors, I mean, there's probably not too many firms in the room that could talk about they went through a merger, demerger, reorganizing an organization. What would you say that the merger, demerger helped you? In terms of getting, because what you've accomplished in 1 year, I mean, I'll admit, we don't have another client that has done this. But this is what we aspire for all of you. But they have led the way in terms of driving 6 applications into an environment. 5 of them are in production, 1's in UAT. That's amazing, amazing. So, but tell us, what were the...
Yeah, I think that's right. Look, I think you've got to look at the amount of management attention that was taken especially by the demerger. It's a big undertaking to list yourselves separately. But I do think the merging of the 2 firms together almost gave us a neutral middle ground to say, could we think about this third way that nobody was really aligned to? So you've got your old processes in one firm, old processes in another, and then this other way. So yeah, look, I think it has helped. It's all been about transparency and support from the execs as well. But in terms of critical success factors, it's often a question we get asked by our sort of central transformation office who oversee this. And really, what good looks like in the end is, for me, is more first line identification of issues rather than the assurance functions. So that for me is really driving that management led identification program. So we've still got a long way to go, and this probably does take 2 to 3 years to get in, but really I think that's sort of what I would say on that.
Ken, Jenny, do you have anything to add?
No, not for me. I think, no, it helped and hindered. I mean, there's not much more to say, really. I think sometimes we get a little frustrated that we couldn't have done some things quicker because of the focus of the exec, particularly on other things. But in some respects, having the time has helped us be a bit more pervasive with our process change, particularly around the risk events issues and things like that. 20 or 30 cottage industries of activity going on, we've brought into one. If they were at us to get stuff out of the door, we potentially might not have done that in the way that we have done it. So, it swings and roundabouts all over the place, really.
To take our time a little bit more than we would. I'm hugely, what's the word? Driven in terms of trying to push things forward, and these guys know all too well that we try and get everything done as quickly as possible. But actually, the extra breathing space we've been given has just given us some time to make sure we get it right from an implementation perspective.
Yeah, I think I always say right, not quick, as
Yeah.
soon as possible, but we have to get this right. And that the business, there's no point rolling out into a business that isn't ready, and that's why that kind of exercise we do is so important.
I met Simon for a meeting, I remember about 6 months ago, and he said to me, he said, you know, when I started this program, I would have said, this is 50% tech problem and 50% people. He's like, it's not.
It's not.
And you said the ratio at the time was like 25-75, 25% tech.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's probably about right. It is about 25% of the time is technology. And I think, you know, we have worked in partnership, and the fact we're sitting here, you know, this has not been the easiest of implementations for anybody, but both sides have learned from it. And I do think the benefit of, you know, all your other customers who will come onto the platform, you know, everybody has learned from this implementation. You know, I remember right back when we started and the team came and said, you know, what are your requirements? And Ken always uses the phrase, no, we've bought the car, just give us the car. So this was new for everybody, and you know, actually, the team have had to be very patient with me on the metric stream side, and my team internally have also had to be very, very patient. But, you know, actually, it's been a tough year, but a very, very rewarding one. And actually now we've got to a point where we've got a very, very credible product. And it's just all about making sure we get the operational risk standards right, and making sure that we get you know, the right pieces around the adoption there, and then we're good to go, really. But I think you know, you shouldn't underestimate, just because we've got the tech ready now. I think the project will still be running till at least September next year, in some way, shape or form. You know, making sure that we properly embed it into that, you know, dreaded BAU model.
And I think that the piece, the slide they had with the bricks, the top 3 bricks we're looking to deliver within the project lifecycle, but actually that culture piece, we're kicking off, but that's ongoing and forever, really.
Yes. Any questions from anyone in the audience? I have more questions, but
Questions?
AJ.
Hey.
Hi, I'm AJ Patel, Standard Chartered. Sounds great, but can I just ask, what did you have before? So did you have any data to migrate? Did you have any unwinding to do?
We had everything.
So I think we probably had 5 to 6 GRC systems. We had spreadsheets. Quite unbelievably, the 2 firms, even though they were part of the same group, were quite different in terms of their approaches to things. So as an organisation before, we had open pages, for example, and what we found with open pages was rolled out. That's where it stopped. And then in terms of the updating of open pages and any sort of training, and that dropped off. And then people started using spreadsheets, and you get in the same problem. So it's really what we've sort of learned from this is the fact we've got to keep it up to date. And so, you know, almost as we've been running the project, we've been looking to tidy data sets up to rate things in the same way, to give it an element of standardization. So we're not having to clean too much, you know, dirty data, as it were, before we put it in the system, or we don't in some cases. So we're just making a call, but it's really about making sure that everybody's ready before we do it. So we've got all of Jenny's, you know, 6 or 7 blocks all lined up, and they're all green and ready to go. So that's pretty much. I don't know if you guys got anything.
Yeah, no. So I think we made a conscious decision, particularly on the data, going through a load of historic data just to manipulate it to get it into metric stream for day one is sometimes a bit of it's a pointless exercise. So we've got access to the data, and we will be able to analyse it and manipulate it into a way that we can join the data and report on it. But we're not going to move it unless we absolutely have to. So live data we will take across. Well, actually, live data we're actually cleaning before we put it into the system. So, you know, to Simon's point, we have a session with Claire Bousfeld, the CFO, so we're doing some stuff around CAS, and the quality of the data is not acceptable. She said, I'll go and sort finance out. And they've said absolutely no one will put data in unless it's right. So, they're under quite severe pressure to get some stuff done. But she's adamant, if it's not right, it's not going in. Yeah. And if you put it in wrong, then the effort to clean it up subsequently is, it's self-defeating.
That answers your question? Yeah, good.
I mean, I was going to say, I mean, I think the key thing, as Simon said, is sponsorship and the governance. I mean, you've got to direction set when you get into this. Everybody's got to understand the journey that you're going on. The governance may be set up in the initial stages as you incubate the product, but then you've got to get the first line involved, you know, and everybody involved across the business. But that ongoing initial governance must persist, because otherwise the whole thing will fall over.
And I think that's right. I think we are incredibly fortunate as well. It does feel like the stars have aligned on a number of different things and have made it easier for us to be successful as a program, because, you know, we're undergoing a huge amount of change anyway, you know, with merging, transforming and demerging all at the same time. So people are looking at things afresh, and, you know, with a new exec team in place, they're very keen to get this stuff right. So yeah, well, I think we are incredibly fortunate.
Yeah. And it plays into the discussion or the presentation that first off, you know, with Andrew around disruption and innovation. We've used a system to innovate the company, and you know, we're going to go around processes after process and just tidy them up, basically.
So your firm has, you know, in many well-paid executives, right? And they all have their views on what the world should look like, especially in the world of GRC. And I know that some of the clients in the audience also struggle with that, right? Because it's like, well, we do it this way, or we work with this system, and this is the best. How did you go about kind of convincing these individuals that this was a market standard to use?
I was going to say, is Paul Cook here?
Paul Cook. Paul's in the room.
Hello,
Paul.
So Paul's one of the team. So Paul's done. I don't know the number of demonstrations to individuals at various levels.
We think it's at least 80, don't we?
Yeah. So, you know, we've shown them. We've shown them the art of the possible, and I think it's putting something in front of people and talking them through what we currently do versus what they could do has been very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think as well, just talking to them individually. So not walking into a committee where you're rushed, or you've got 15-minute slot, or, you know, there's much more important things coming on the agenda. You know, it's actually taking the time to talk to them, and we've tried to speak to the exec team on a quarterly basis individually, just let them know where we are, what we're doing, how we're getting on. You know, and actually a lot of them are interested in, you know, how their business area is behaving and how they're engaging in the project, and are they doing the right thing? And actually, when you go out and talk to people about this stuff, you know, people are actually lapping it up in terms of, you know, we've been invited to various sales conferences and things like that to talk about the importance of this stuff, and you know, it's really just taking the time and getting in their diary and being friendly with their PA to try and get you in their diary. So yeah, I mean, that's. But essentially, we just try to put them what they will get out of it. So what you will get out of it is much better reporting. You'll get much better MI. This will be much more transparent. You know, rather than having to go to 8 to 10 different assurance providers, you'll have all your assurance actions in one place, and your business manager can run a report for you and give it to you right away, and you can chase your directs because, you know, it's all there in front of you. And one of the execs actually said to me, we ran through this pack, and it's a similar sort of pack to what we've got today, and he said, right, all very well, Simon, thanks very much for that. You're basically telling me that nobody's got any excuses around this stuff anymore. And I was like, yeah, pretty much. And so, yeah, we're very fortunate how they've engaged as a team as well.
How do you ensure then that the execs actually stay engaged with the system, do what they're supposed to do in terms of reporting, et cetera?
I think it's being, for me, I don't really think, but it's about being pragmatic as well. You know, are the execs going to go into the system every 5 minutes to do something? They're probably not. So you have to, you know, make sure that you make it as easy to use as possible. So can they delegate things to their business managers, or could they, you know, when they receive an action, you know, they get an action via email. Is there a quick video that gives them a minute to say, right, this is what you need to do because you haven't done this for 6 months. So it's being pragmatic around their usage as well. And, you know, one thing Jenny is going to be doing is doing individual training sessions, you know, with them to take them through it. And, you know, ultimately the firm has spent a lot of money on this, and, you know, it's a key program for us. So, really they want to use it as well, and they want to lead. It's all like tone from the top, tune from the middle. But they want to lead on it.
I think as well, when they start to see the power of the MI that we're going to get out of this system, at the moment it's in so many different places that actually is another cottage industry, there's a few, of pulling the information together and actually having it all in one place, being able to cut it in so many different ways so we can actually start comparing business areas and seeing where ones aren't maybe doing so well, but also seeing where ones are doing well. I think I was in a session yesterday about being able to share best practice. At the moment, it's actually quite hard to see that because the data's...
And I think there's a number of efficiencies as well that you get out of this. So actually, in terms of how you report and looking at reporting structures, rather than cutting numbers mid-month, taking numbers at the end of the month and reporting it through, and looking around, people chasing risk events or things like that. There are a number of things across the firm where, by having this central source of the truth when it comes to risk and control, it makes us much more efficient and allows us to focus on the things, especially in the risk function, that the business wants. Root cause, the value add, emerging risk type scanning that we're not spending as much time doing because we're spending a lot of time with rubbish data, to be honest with you.
Any other questions from the audience?
Easy ride.
Yeah, very easy ride. It's impressive.
Nice crowd, aren't they?
Oh, there we are. One over there.
Good afternoon. Question. You referred a few times to data, which gives me the impression that it was an effort for you to come to qualitative data. What did you actually have to undertake in that area? Can you specify that a bit?
Yeah, so I think there's a number of things here. So I think at the heart of harmonizing the processes, consistency and predictability of data is quite important, because then as people move across the processes, they've got a predictable understanding of what to expect. So putting in place the various standards that we've put in place around the assurance areas, bringing in a consistent risk taxonomy that we're going to use across all of the different assurance providers and risk, et cetera, helps us create a level of predictability for the processes. But one of the other areas that we've had to work on with the organisation is, I suppose, what you'd call reference data, so lists of products, lists of, the organisation structures, et cetera, So we've been in a position where, we're going out to people saying, you bring this into the system, this is going to be used for the executive committee, may even potentially go to regulators. We expect the data to be right. And then people then think, well, I didn't think you were going to use it for that. We need to do some more work. So we're working within the company to put some more robust data governance around lots of the data sources that some people may take for granted, just to make sure that people get the right level of consistency and we get the right level of quality that people can stand behind. Does that answer your question?
The other thing we've been, just thinking about it, the other thing we've been doing in terms of risk events, which I quite like, is the team have been playing back the quality of risk events to the teams. So where people have completed and existed, are you happy with that? And then, actually, no, we probably need to do much more work on it. And actually, when you get the system, the fields and metric stream available, and you look at the text that's been written previously around an event, then it's actually helping to drive a bit more consistency and a bit more quality in the reporting around events as well. So actually using the system to help, improve data quality from an inputting perspective. But really at the moment, just feel for the first line that a lot of data is put in and it goes in the hopper, and then they don't really get it played back to them at the moment. So it's massively important if they spend a lot of time filling it all in, we need to be playing back to them what the messages are, what the root causes are, and what the themes are across the firm. So that's how we intend to use the product to drive that consistency.
Perfect. So
there's another hand up down there. I don't know if we've got time.
There's another one back there in the back.
Hi, Simran. Related to data, This is with the system performance. As you started using the product more data, more users, did you ever have issues with system performance, users being timed out?
I mean, we're in our early stages, so the volume of data we've got on it, to my mind, is quite trivial at the moment, so we've not really encountered that. I think that, this is what you call it, a system in the cloud, so, I'd expect us to have ongoing monitoring with metric stream, and we would fine-tune it at capacity as we require. At a point in time, we may need to do some archiving, but from what we're seeing at the moment, we've not really seen anything as such.
It's probably too
early
to tell you yet.
Any other questions? One last question, if anyone on the floor wants to ask. I'll just say that I started with Metric Stream a year ago, and so one of my first client meetings was with Simon and Ken, and I was like really looking forward to seeing how this whole project was going to unfold over the next year. And I have to say, it's been, as Simon said earlier, it's been a really good partnership, and I think that our team, which I would like Ritesh and Nami to stand up, they're the delivery team that have worked very closely with, obviously, these guys up here on stage. And I think our team and just our whole delivery operation has learned a lot in terms of working with these guys. And that's what partnership is about, right? Yeah. You realize that you're working together, and we're all in this, and we're going to deliver to you what you need for the business. And it's been hugely beneficial for us, and obviously, as they wouldn't be here, believe you me, they would not be here if they were not happy.
Anna, you are the first.
I cannot buy them a glass of beer or champagne to get them on stage.
You are the first to know if we are unhappy, but just to echo that, the team on the ground have been fantastic. They're really, really patient. Sometimes our unreasonable requests, unreasonable emails, but actually, we have both got better. And the thing is that both of us can't stop getting better. And my one point to you guys is that the learnings from our implementation are put into other implementations, and you keep driving yourselves forward, because I think it's really important, because ultimately you've got a brilliant product.
So, not much to add to that. Thank you very much.